Very good morning. Welcome to Weekend Breakfast, 7:26 with me, David Bull. I'm joined by the delightful Dr. Renee Hunderkamp, who's looking resplendent, I have to say. By the way, loads of messages coming in. Just turned TalkTV on. Dr. David Bull and Dr. Renee look amazing. It's a great, cheery start to the day. Nice one, guys. Thank you very much indeed to Ebenezer Slug for that one. About Harry and Meghan, they should never be allowed to set foot in the UK again. I agree, and strip them of their titles.
I knew I was going to upset people.
Well, it's just ridiculous. And then in terms of the nurses, agency nurses are being paid double the hourly rate of a full-time nurse. Employ them full-time and save billions.
Yes, but they've got to want to come, haven't they? You can't just say, right, that's it, you can't be an agency nurse.
I love the way you go. Yeah, I know. Apparently, Daisy McAndrew was wearing the same jumper you're wearing last night. Is it the same one, says Andrew in Salisbury?
No.
Are you and Daisy sharing a closet?
No. But perhaps we should. Perhaps that would be cheaper.
It would be cheaper. Have you seen the price of that jumper? That's all I'm saying. Right. This one from Mark from Nuneaton. I have a friend who works for Royal Mail, and he told me back in October that anything that doesn't get posted before the end of November won't be there for Christmas. And that is Mark in Nuneaton.
Yes, I heard that if you didn't post it by last Friday, it wasn't going to arrive till February.
It's just... The whole country is falling apart, isn't it, at the moment? Good morning, Santa David, says Mr. Stephen Durham. Good morning to you. It had to happen. The hat is on. Mrs. Antlers is looking lovely as well. The nurses that didn't strike are the ones we need, not the uni-indoctrinated ones screaming on picket lines. You're either a nurse or you're an activist. You can't actually be both.
I agree. Shall we quickly talk about reindeers and antlers? I think it's important for people to know that in the winter, male reindeers drop their antlers. Only the females keep their antlers, which means that Santa's sleigh is pulled by a group of women, of course.
You would say that. Right, good morning, Dr. David and Dr. Renee. You're both looking beautifully festive. I'm sat in bed with a cup of tea. I love weekends. You both brighten my day.
Oh,
thank you
it's lovely,
very much indeed. And John in Lincolnshire, one more saying, thank goodness the good doctors are back. Please, can we ignore you know who? Those two. Those two, the ones I'm
I know. I was asked last night to ignore it. I said I didn't think I could keep that promise.
Well, I thought I should just ask the question. But anyway, right, let's move on now, if we may, to our paper review. Joining us this morning is Monica Price, who's a health and wellbeing expert and broadcaster. Good morning.
Good morning, David, and good morning, Renee.
And look how festive you look.
And look, the earrings. And we're a love Christmas bubble.
We really are.
We really are.
I have champagne.
And I have Rudolph, who's a woman. Who's a woman now.
Rudolph is a woman. I'm very upset by this. That can't possibly be right.
We've got the papers. Well, trying to find good news in the papers was interestingly difficult today.
So did you find, actually, there weren't that many stories? I mean, there are stories, obviously, about nursing strike, ambulance strikes and so on, but there aren't a huge number of stories.
No, it's all about strike action, nurses, Harry and Meghan, all that we've been talking about, really, for most of the week. But, however, I have managed to find some good stories for you.
Well done.
So, where should we start? I think we'll start, actually, with this one I found in the lovely Sun newspaper about Gary Glitter.
That's a good story.
Yes. Now, it's not a good story, but we're going to start. No, we're going to start with this one so we can finish on a good one.
Right, okay.
But this is an interesting one because he was a pop idol, of course, Gary Glitter, and in the 70s, and
before my time, I just want to say.
Mine.
Yes, and of course, and he's been released from jail after serving just half of his actual sentence, 16 years. Wow. And of course, as always, he's got loads of money in the bank, and he's got a mansion, and it looks like he's likely to be tagged.
Right.
But he's going to be living his life as normal. And yet he was already sentenced in Vietnam. He went to prison in Vietnam in 2008. Glasses are on. Thank you, Renee.
Well done.
And then, of course, he's just served this sentence in the UK, where, as I say, he was jailed for 16 years. And thank you. And he was jailed for sexually abusing 3 girls between the ages of 8 and 12. And
his lives will be ruined.
Exactly.
So I don't understand. What do we feel about the fact that he's served, as you say, half his sentence and he's allowed out?
No, I don't agree with that at all.
Well, I don't understand when a sentence isn't a sentence.
Yes, when you're giving a sentence, you should, especially for something like paedophilia, you should have that sentence for however many years that is, and serve it to the absolute end. I don't care if he's been a good boy in prison. I don't care that he's been a pop idol in the 70s. I don't care that he's got loads of money in the bank. I care about the people that obviously
But also, what message does this send out to other people if you say, well, actually, if we give a sentence of 16 years, actually it's only 8, or 8 is only 4.
Exactly
because I think most of the public don't agree with that, and they don't understand it, and they want to see the law being enforced.
You know, as a doctor, you'll know this. We are always shaped and formed by patients that we've seen and never forget over the years. And one of the patients I have never forgotten was a young girl who was abused as part of a paedophile ring, who went on to develop a completely different life in another town in the country, but she was totally and utterly scarred by what had happened to her. And she tried so hard to make a good life for herself, which she did, but she was living with those shadows. It influenced how she raised her children. You know, it was awful.
I agree, and I think it's just, you know, he's out and he's there, and what does that say? As you say, what does that say to the people that have been sexually abused over the years?
It says you're not as important as Gary Glitter.
Exactly.
Well, it does really.
And it's because he's Gary Glitter.
But,
you know.
but I assume this is also pressure on prison places, making sure that there's more capacity in the system, which we know. But surely the answer is to build more prisons.
Well, you would think so, or just we don't seem to have had prison system is so overloaded at the moment, and we're always talking about that, but we don't seem to have got some kind of strategy to make it better.
You know,
we just seem to complain all the time.
I spoke to my mum about this in the week, actually, and she comes at it obviously from an older person's viewpoint, and she said, you know, we should just throw away the key. And I said, trying to balance things, well, you know, in America, Mum, they give really long sentences, but it doesn't improve crime. And she said, and I thought this was really interesting, she said, I don't care if it disencourages people from crime, I just don't want them on the streets. And there you are. She wasn't interested in, you know, whether or not it was a disincentive to commit crime. She said if they're doing it, put them in prison. And you know what? I agree.
Yeah, and I agree. So therefore, if the sentence sticks, the sentence that is handed down, it then acts as a warning to other people that that is the sentence you will serve, because it's so muddy at the moment.
It is, and he'll go on probably to, you know, write a book, you know, probably do a documentary, you know,
reoffend.
Yes, exactly. And if he's allowed to do that, you know, I just don't think that's right. So that was one story.
Okay, where would you like to go next?
So, the next story I thought was interesting because we're talking about money, of course, and we've spoken about this. This was in the Daily Telegraph, and it was talking about the how a year of the rate rises hit your pocket.
Oh, yes.
As we know, you know, we're all in a terrible situation.
And of course, it's gone up again.
Yes, and it's gone up again. You know, and the latest, this particular article, was interesting because it kind of outlines all. So it's a really good article to have a read of, actually. But it's been 1 year since the Bank of England first raised their interest rates, and that was, of course, to stop rampant inflation at the time. But since then, it's just escalating and escalating. So combined with the double digital inflation and the worst cost of living crisis, where we know that, you know, the financial fallout for our households, for the average British household, currently is just awful. And it goes on to say that the new year is actually going to bring higher costs, higher rates, and higher taxes. So at what point do we stop?
Well, I think you make a great point. I mean, we've seen inflation coming down from 11.1% down to 10.7%, but at the same time, food prices astronomically high. I mean, extraordinarily high.
Much higher than the 10%.
Much higher.
And also, when you go into supermarkets now, you'll go and buy one product, you know, a jar of pasta sauce, for example, and it's gone up 15, 20 pence.
So I also looked at sort of fresh meat and things like that. If you look at, say, lamb, that's gone up. What was £4 is now £6. Now, how did that happen?
Exactly. And turkeys, for example, you know, all the turkeys this year are hugely more expensive.
They have all got flu.
They have all got flu,
True, yes.
Because we did an item about why you need a frozen turkey.
That's right, yes, that's right, yeah, I saw that. You know, and I think it's just, you know, one of those things that we obviously we're aware of, but what they're saying is, you know, with all these rising increases, it's just going to continue. And markets expect that the Bank of England rate is to peak at 4.5% in the first half of next year. So 2023...
Are we encouraged that inflation is coming down? Are we encouraged? Is this the early signs, do you think, of where have we peaked?
I'd like to say yes. I'd like to say I'm hoping that we have.
Because fuel prices are coming down. We've seen the price of oil coming down, obviously.
People are not spending for Christmas.
Yes, people are really tight. And I think charity shops are absolutely booming at the moment. Loads more people are shopping in charity shops. You know, I shop in charity shops. I love charity shops. And I think people are really looking around now. They tend to go to different supermarkets for different items, as opposed to perhaps getting all of their
Well, I mean, I
groceries.
know from my own supermarket shopping habits, I'm now looking for the discounts. I'm looking at, in a way that I never used to look at all, because I think I won't buy that. It's an exorbitant price. But then if I buy this with the discount that you get, therefore that's a fine meal that I can have.
It is.
And I think, if it's affecting all of us, we're all changing our shopping habits.
Yes.
And food banks.
I do worry, and I think this article actually points it out, that we have not seen the darkest days yet.
No,
and I think next year people have no idea how bad it's going to be for some people, and that really worries me.
It does, and also because, from a health and well-being perspective, we've got mental health is a huge issue anyway, but we've got to go through a winter yet. We're only in December. We've still got most of December, January, February. So fuel bills, costs of living, food banks now are just
and we
being
all
visited
know,
all the time.
in terms of mental health, the winter is so hard for people. They can't see a way out. It's miserable. It's cold. You can't afford to turn the heating on. Food prices are astronomically high. And, of course, people really come to the end of their tether in winter, don't they?
They do. I mean, I did a recent article about SAD, and it was, though that now is on the increase, as you probably are aware.
So
of course.
seasonal affective
disorder, exactly. And it's such a common condition that people often don't talk about, and often people who've got it don't actually realise they've got it. They just think, I'm just not feeling.
I'm just miserable.
Yeah, just miserable.
I think we've all got it.
Only in winter. That's it. So this is a very interesting article to read, because I think it points out, as you say, Renee. I think we're not out of the woods yet, but I think we.
But is there some positivity
absolutely,
somewhere?
Yes, there is. And this article is saying that we're going to peak next year, and so next year, hopefully, maybe by the spring, by the financial year, so April, springtime, hopefully, fingers crossed. But it's all doom and gloom. So I think people need to think about their money, think about saving some, putting some aside.
Well, how?
If they can.
Can't. I mean, you literally can't. Most people are living hand to mouth. Not even that. They're also going into their savings. They cannot afford stuff. If you've got children at school as well, and then you're trying to actually put groceries on the table, it's just impossible. And the heating bills, even with the government sort of discount, the winter fuel discount, it's insane.
It is.
Unbelievable.
Most of my friends, including my own, their bills have just doubled. How are you expected to?
You were telling us the price of your. What
so in November, when I really didn't turn my heating on for more than about 5 days, my total electricity and gas bill was £402
for not being on.
For not being on,
and I live in a 3-bedroom semi. I don't live in a castle.
That's crazy.
I know it is.
And how do you do that? My friend's heating. She lives in quite a big house. And it's instead of 600 and something, it's just doubled. How do you find that money? 1,200 a month.
That's a big house.
That's a big house.
Right.
Well, is it?
Well, no, probably isn't.
This is
actually.
it. It's not that big. But she's got lots of children, and it's a big family.
Yeah, of course.
And what do? You
and they need to shower and bath, and you need to be warm. I know.
Exactly. It's so difficult.
Actually, it was really nice. Where I live in Suffolk, one of the farmers, they have an Arga, which is on all the whole time. And I thought it was rather lovely. They put a post saying, because the Arga's on all the time and I can't do anything about it, would anyone like to come and use it for a slow casserole, for example?
I
thought that was a really nice
How many pots can you get?
Yes,
it depends how many doors are on the Arga, but you can have a 6-door Arga.
He knows about his Argas.
I do know about Argas. I may have
one. You see,
one.
they're really good. And coal fires, wood burners, all those things are great.
They're going to try and ban them.
Yes, I know, but that's the thing.
Aren't they?
They're trying to ban them.
They're not getting rid of mine.
That's right. Well, they're not getting rid of
my dead body. You're not taking my fire.
I'm the same.
Yeah.
I love a fire.
So do I.
We have to have a comfort, Renaud. We've got to have something.
Well, indeed. Right, what else have you got?
Right, so the next one was, of course, Mr. Becker, Boris Becker, that is, in the Daily Mail. Again, it's hit all the papers, the fact that he's come out of jail. Now, Mr. Becker was a very naughty boy, and the headline is Boris is plotting his most unlikely comeback yet. He's gone back to Germany. He's come out of prison. He can't stay in the UK.
Yeah.
for tax evasion, basically. He just didn't pay his taxes. Now, if you read the story in more detail, which I did...
I think it was a bankruptcy lie.
It was a bankruptcy lie, exactly that. Because it said that it was tax evasion, but you're absolutely right, Rennie. When you actually read the story and look into more detail, he just went bankrupt, and he had, this was a man that was, this was a man. I mean, he was unseeded at the age of 17, and then he became obviously Wimbledon's youngest ever male champion in 1985, and he came up with like 20 million in his career winnings. So this is a man that won a lot of money, and then unfortunately he declared bankruptcy in 2017, and then he was sentenced to 2.5 years in prison in April for hiding the 2.5 million in assets to avoid paying his debts.
But I don't care.
No, I just think that's terrible.
Why did he go to prison? Why didn't Gary Glitter stay in prison for ruining young girls' lives when Boris should have just got hit where it hurts most to him, which is
financially.
Money, exactly.
Absolutely.
Right.
Fine him and do that. Put him in a prison.
Well, also fine him,
Yes.
deport him.
Yes, fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even really care about that. He's not going to harm our children.
No.
That's
Yes.
what worries me.
Indeed.
It's interesting, and it's funny when you should say that. It's why I picked up on the story, and I was going to say exactly the same. It's interesting, our jail system, our judicial system. It seems very very strange, but he's out, and of course he's got a huge support from the tennis players. He's got massive support.
And of course he'll do after dinner speaking, won't he? He'll be
That's
going around
exactly
the
what the
circuit.
story is all about.
Do you know,
Is it? Yeah.
do you know what was really interesting about this? When he was being investigated for this, and it looked like he had actually done it, the BBC still had him as a presenter.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, he's going to be doing some presenting for the Australian Open, apparently, but he can't obviously set foot on
Can he
air
go to
still.
Australia? No.
No, he can't. No, he's going to have to do it all by video link.
Well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah, so that's ridiculous.
Right, shall we move on?
Yes,
Because
of
I know
course.
time is tight.
Yes, time is ticking, time is ticking. So that was the lovely Boris story. I think, have we got time for 2 more or just one
Very
more?
quickly.
Okay, so quickly, the one in The Guardian then was about the drugs found after
Oh, this
parties
is a
at
great
Trafford's Club.
story.
Yes, now this is it. Now this was a story that I thought, would interest you. Now, this was a story at the, now what was
This
the
is
name
at
of the
Liz
house?
Truss's.
Cheveling House, that's
Yeah,
right,
Cheveling
that's
House.
right, Cheveling House. Now, she wasn't there, but I love the way they put a trust, it's all
Yeah,
about trust, but she wasn't
but
there.
what is the story?
So the story is traces of a suspected A drug, so
Class A drug.
was
Thinking
found, cocaine. So they've called it white powder, was discovered at the Cheveling estate last summer, just before the Tories won the Tory leadership. So just before Truss won the Tory leadership.
It would make her more interesting if she had been
Oh,
there.
this is it. But
Doctor.
yeah, that's right. But it's an interesting story because, of course, if you turn to the page, it's a whole story about it, and of course, it's a huge thing. So that's going to now go through the
Well,
mills
and obviously Liz Truss wasn't there, but if you're interested in that, read that.
yes,
It's
that's a very good
story.
one.
And then finally,
that's the end of a nice one. The racer cracks Antarctic ice marathon on world tour. This is a lovely story that's in the Times. There was a lovely lady called Jeannie Cordy Simpson. She set out to do this Antarctic ice marathon. What it was, she had a cousin who was died of breast cancer very, very early, and she wanted to do a campaign called 40-40-40. And she's intending to spend her 40s raising a matching 40,000 for the age of 40. She didn't get to be, and this was her cousin. But what was so interesting was she met so many people along the way, and she met a 69-year-old lady called Christine Hobson, who was retired head teacher, who did this London Marathon, in temperatures, minus 20 degrees, and managed to, was still fit enough to run this marathon in the Antarctic. But a very well-known Sean Tobin at 28, he was an Irish athlete. He actually crossed the line and broke the record. But again, very interesting read, and I like the fact that so many different ages took part.
and also
it's
such
to
a
raise
great
breast
human
cancer.
interest story.
It
It
is.
shows there is humanity there, doesn't it?
And the charity that it was all for was a charity which I've heard of, which you may have heard of, is Copperfield, which is breast cancer charity. So they're desperately trying to raise money for that. So that was a great story.
Fantastic.
I felt.
Well, thank you so much,
Thank
Monica.
You so much.
It's been great to have
lovely.
you in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I go like that now.
Yeah, you can do that now if you like. I'll do that as well. Coming up after the break, it's Tom Clayton's Sporting Roundup. This is Talk TV. We're broadcasting live from the Talk Radio studios.